This is a video about adding and subtracting fractions. So we're going to start with a pretty easy one. We're going to say 3/4 plus 1/2. So the thing you got to do whenever you're adding or subtracting fractions, you got to find a common denominator. Of course, denominator is this bottom part here. So this 3/4 has a denominator of 4. 1/2 has a denominator of 2. So in this one, we're going to multiply this side by 2 over 2. So all we're doing right here, and this is how you're always going to do this, you can always multiply 1 into a problem. So 2 over 2 is just 1. So what we're going to say now is we're going to say this stays the same. And then 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So all we've done, like I said, is we just multiplied 1 into this problem. Because if you were to reduce this right here, you would come back with 1/2, and that's how it always should work. Because you're not changing the value of the problem. So whenever you're adding fractions, you add straight across on top. So that goes with 5. And then you just keep your common denominator, which in this case is 4. So this is 3/4 plus 1/2. Now, of course, you can write this differently, but we're going to leave it like this. Alright, this is another pretty simple one. Let's do it real quick. So it's a 5/8 plus 3/4. So hopefully you realize that we don't need to change this 8 at all, because we can just multiply this side by 2. And of course we got to do 2 over 2 because we're just multiplying 1 into the problem. So we keep our 5/8 plus 6 over 8. We keep our common denominator, add straight across, and we get 11/8 for our answer. So if we did want to, I know we didn't change the last one, but if we did want to change this one, what we could do is we would keep our denominator as 8, and then we find out how many 8s are in 11. What that means is just how many times 8 can go in 11. Of course, it can only go into it one time, and then we're left over with 3. So that's how you would write it, like that. And then if you want to go back, you multiply 1 times 8, and then add 3. So we say 1 times 8 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. And then keep your denominator every time. So that's how you go back and forth. Alright, this one's a little different, because on this one we're going to multiply something by both sides. So we say 1/3 plus 3/4. So in the last two, all the denominators are pretty simple, where we can just multiply something by one of the denominators and get the other denominator. But in this case, there's no way to get 3 into 4. So one way that's always going to work is we can always multiply the denominators by each other. So in this case, we could always say 4 over 4 and then 3 over 3, because if we multiply them by each other, you're actually just multiplying by the same thing, so you know it's going to work out. Sometimes there's going to be ways where you can find numbers that are smaller that are going to work out, but in this case it's not going to. So in this one we're going to say 4 over 12. 12 is obviously going to be our new common denominator, so when we add across, we'll just say 4 plus 9, which will give us 13. Common denominator 12. If you want to change it, you can look at that last problem again to see how to change that, but I would probably just leave it as 13 over 12. Let's do one more addition where you have to change both sides, and then we'll work a couple of subtraction. The subtraction ones aren't going to be that much different than addition. So of course in this case you can't multiply anything by 3 to get 5, or anything by 5 to get 3, or at least no whole numbers to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this side by 3, this side by 5. So we get 3 times 9 is 27. Common denominator of 15 plus 10 over 15. Keep our common denominator the same. So add across the top, and we get 37 over 15. Or you could say 2 over 7/15. However you want to write that. So like I said, subtraction is pretty much the same exact thing. So we'll say 2/5 minus 3 over 10. So in this case we're going back to something that's a little simple, because we could just multiply this side by 2 over 2. So we get 4 over 10 minus 3 over 10. And then when I said you add straight across, technically this is the same thing as adding, because what we could do is we could just say this is adding a negative 3. The same thing as subtracting, so it's not going to change the way you do the problem at all. It's going to end up being 1/10. Alright, let's try another subtraction problem. So we're going to take 1/3 and subtract 5 over 7 from it. So in this one, of course, there's nothing that we can multiply by 3 to get to 7 or 7 to get to 3. Let's say a whole number. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides, or this side by 7 over 7, this side by 3 over 3. So we get 7 over 21 minus 15 over 21, with 21 being our common denominator. So we're going to get a negative number because we're subtracting a smaller positive number from a larger negative number. So 7 minus 15, that gives us a negative 8, and there's no problem with having a negative number. So we're going to try one more thing. We're going to try to multiply or subtract a fraction from a whole number. So we're going to say 2 over 7 minus 3. Okay, so the only thing that makes this a little difficult or maybe a little confusing is the fact that, of course, this 3 is not a fraction. Everything we're doing is we've been trying to find a common denominator. So we're still going to try to find a common denominator, but the first thing we have to do is make this 3 a fraction. So to do that, all you have to do is put it over 1, because every number is technically over 1. So now we have it as a fraction. So now this is actually going to be a pretty easy problem, because we can just say 7 over 7, and 7 is going to be our common denominator. So we say 2/7 minus 21 over 7. So again, we're going to get a negative number here. We're going to keep our 7 the same because that's our common denominator. And then we'll just say 2 minus 21, which would be 19. So negative 19 over 7. Of course, you can reduce that if you want to, but like I said, I'll probably just leave it like this the majority of the time. So remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, to always try and find your common denominator.